to share with you what I have learned really growing up under apartheid system, what lessons I have learned. I'll say a little bit what apartheid is about, just a little bit, and then I'll focus on the lessons I have learned. I'm originally from South Africa. I came to the US 25 years ago, and I went to school at UC Berkeley, and I came after I lost my son and my husband when I was expecting one of my daughters. I went to school at UC Berkeley. I got my master's and my PhD there. And then, I was born in apartheid. I grew up in apartheid. I fought apartheid. I participated in the struggle against apartheid, and I saw apartheid collapse. And, South Africa is free. So it is, in many ways, a wonderful life, better than going to Disneyland. I don't know, apartheid was, the themes that we are talking about here, the concepts, the themes, the C's that we are talking about here, were there in apartheid. We can talk about that apartheid was complex. It was about resources. It was about the land. It was, about all those things. But they took a small thing, differences, in my opinion, differences, superficial differences of skin, color. They didn't know how to negotiate that. Instead, they constructed a ladder that divided people. They put whites at the top, Asians, so-called coloreds, and blacks at the bottom. And then came up with a political, educational, health structure, right? Institutionalized everything based on that. And then created a very difficult life for people. That system of discrimination was in place for 362 years. It was given a name of apartheid in 1948 and was intensified. So that was apartheid. A lot of people died under that system. A lot of people were tortured under that system. But what happened with the involvement in the struggle? When you get involved in the struggle, let me speak for myself. Why did I get involved in the struggle, right? I got involved in the struggle because I wanted a better world, right? I wanted a better world, to create a better world. I didn't get involved in the struggle so that I should be so that I should have a school of thought that was going to be oppressive. I'm going to remove it from color and talk about the school of thought, right? Because people who were involved in the struggle were people of all colors, right? It was, other people were, they had more advantage and privileges than the others, and others were oppressed. But the involvement in the struggle was, it went beyond just color to involve even those people who had a different color, the color of people who oppressed, but the school of thought was different, right? The school of thought was different. They were not subscribing to oppression. So that taught me that I would like to have a better world. How do you want a better world, right? How did I want a better world? I looked at those elements that promoted oppression. Obviously, a few minutes ago, you talked about to be okay with discomfort. I learned from that. I learned that that's another C. I should be comfortable in my discomfort in order to be compassionate. I learned that it's okay when I am amongst people I don't feel comfortable with, for me to be able to help. I'll give you an example because I lived in the USA for 25 years now. When I see when I see an individual with, I call them poo-poo pens, you know, the pens that hang, yeah. Um, when I, my first reaction is not to be fearful. It's not to be fearful, right? If I feel discomfort, I just, you know, say hello, right? It doesn't mean that they are thugs, they are going to attack me, even though I am in the United States and everything else is telling me to distrust them. You know, the media and every subliminal and blatant messages are telling me to be afraid of those kids who wear different clothes, who wear hoodies. So that's how I have learned really to be very comfortable with my discomfort, and that's what I tell students. I also teach a class on genocide and Holocaust studies. I not only teach the history, at the end we do personal reflections. And this is what I want to share. When we were talking about peace, talking about reconciliation, and I'll talk about that also a little later, talking about peace, talking about reconciliation, asking students what can they do to make a better world, what can they do to, you know, on a little bit to try and stop mass killings maybe. One of my classes did write to the UN to tell them to extend the definition of genocide. They did that. But one student in particular did not believe me when I say I practice, like everybody was saying, intentional, right? Maya was saying it's practice every day. It is, I totally agree, and I try to do that myself. This student followed me the whole semester, saying to me, but Dr. Mosupyoe, you mean if I come with a hot coffee and throw it on you, you won't punch me? I said, I won't. And he asked me, what will you do? What will you say? I said, I'll say it in my language and then I'll translate. I said to him, I'll probably say mawe, right? That's what we do when you feel pain. You call out to your mother, mawe, right? I said, I'll probably say that. He really didn't believe me. He thought that I was going, you know, the natural reaction was to punch. So I'm going to ask the audience, when somebody comes with a hot, well, not the one, let's say warm, warm cup of coffee and throws it on your new, beautiful white dress, woody, maybe you're wearing a new shirt, you know, what would be your reaction? How would you react? What do you think how do you think you'll react? Why? Okay. Why? Okay, you'll say why. Okay, you won't fight them, right? Will it depend on age? Will it depend on who did it? Will it depend on anybody? Yes.
Whether I think that it's an accident or whether I think they did it on purpose.
If they did it on purpose.
Yeah, I guess like you said, other things, whether their age, if it was a child, it could have been an adult.
Yeah. So that was the experience that the student asked me, but that's how I responded, and that's how I learned from. Really, I learned from having lived under apartheid. Some of the codes that I'm going to say, David has one of them in his package. You know, Mahatma Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world, right? Yeah. This is what I tell my students too. You know, it's part and parcel of the genocide and Holocaust studies that I teach, that how do you become the change you want to see? It's not easy. It has to be intentional. You have to practice it. You have to practice it every day. It's very difficult to be humble. I'll speak for myself. It's very difficult to be humble. It takes practice also to be humble. I asked students what can they do, can they give examples of how they can be humble, how they can practice humility. How do I practice humility? I practice humility by this also is also here in the Seeds of Peace toolkit, by being an active listener, right? I try to listen. I have heard Barack Obama one time when he was running for practice saying that, for presidency, when he said that he listens to those who disagrees with him most, right? And that's one of the things that, especially those that I disagree with, I try to listen actively. I try to see their point of view. It's not always easy, but that's another way of for me to practice humility. Courage for me manifests in so many ways, and then I'll go to what I was going to talk about: reconciliation and forgiveness. Okay. In my discussions and my experience, it's very difficult for some people, right? When you talk about forgiveness, they'll tell you that forgiveness has to do with, it's more a spiritual thing or maybe a religious thing. So I'm going to leave forgiveness alone and then talk about reconciliation, right? Reconciliation, you need to have courage to reconcile, especially when you have been impacted by violence, or you are a victim. Let me put it that way. If you are a victim of violence, right, it's very difficult to reconcile. So, but what will motivate people to reconcile? I will say that you've got to have courage, one of the C's. You've got to have courage, right, to reconcile with somebody who has really inflicted a lot of pain on you. Take situations of genocide, take Rwanda, for instance, or Cambodia, any situation, the Holocaust, right? It takes courage, really, to want to reconcile. But you have to be committed to peace, to want to reconcile, right? You have to be committed to your community, right? All the C's. You have to be committed to your community to reconcile, right? What does reconciliation mean? Some people, when you talk about love, it's very difficult, like, everybody was saying, Maya was saying, and then it's very difficult to be a peacemaker, like you also were saying. It's very difficult to be a peacemaker. It's not impossible, but it's it's possible. We can create that culture. People, when you talk about love, I don't have problem with love. I love people. There are different levels of loving. But when you do this work, people will tell you that I can't go about loving everybody. I can't go about loving everybody. That's fine. There is an alternative. You can be committed to your community. You can be committed to the desire to have a peaceful world, right? And then by doing that, then you can do other things. So, there are ways of navigating all these difficult concepts and that we are talking about, and then to really put them into practice, right? Collaboration also, it's one of the important things, to collaborate with those you live with. Collaborate with you have to collaborate all the time. Collaborate with your children, family, friends, colleagues, all the time. You have to collaborate with them, have to be committed to doing that. Acts of kindness. right? Acts of kindness. You know, on a daily basis, we encounter difficult situations. I'll say a few weeks ago, we drove into a mall, waited for a long time for a parking space, for a long time. And then when we were about to drive into the parking space, somebody just came from and took the space. It was very difficult, you know, it was very difficult not to confront them, but you have to like intentionally think about the fact that you are a peacemaker, and then you have to be peaceful. And the individual I was with, we treated it very peacefully. I was very proud of the person, you know, didn't drive there, just let it go. But afterwards, we had a conversation that what's important. Will this individual learn not to do it another time? Will she think that it is okay to do that? But at the end of the day, we said what's important. What's important is for us to maintain the peace. Maybe someday she will learn, hopefully, you know, it won't be in a violent way, because people do take out guns, shoot others for the parking spots. I'm not a person who talks a lot, so I'm just going to stop here and say that that's what I have learned from the apartheid, being involved in the apartheid system. It was just a natural progression for me to be involved with global majority and to want peace, you know, to create peace for people. I have gone through to so many countries, to Nepal, to the Middle East, to so many, even peaceful countries like Costa Rica. I've taken my colleagues to South Africa. I've been to so many places working for peace. The work in the Middle East, working with Palestinian and Israeli people who have lost women, who have lost children in the violence that's going on there, was still is the most gratifying. Thank you.